Okay, g'day everyone. I am making this little video about some military games slash flight simulators that are available, and I've been watching people play the games online. And not only are they playing a game, but you can chop and choose some of these scenarios, and one of the ones, I can't remember exactly what it's called. It might be Command Modern somethings. Anyway, I'll try and leave a link in the description after this video. Some people are saying that the Pentagon and different militaries around the world use these simulators to practice techniques and weaponry, and there's lots of details about different types of weaponry, whether that's from vehicles, tanks, planes, submarines, etc., to radar systems, and when you click on the individual things, it tells you all the data that's related to them. So you have the cross-sectional surface area of like the Joint Strike Fighter versus a conventional F-18 Super Hornet, etc. What's really good, and where I started watching this, and I might put a link or two in the description or in some of my other comments. I might leave I don't really know how to leave multiple links, so I might have to do a few comments with different links in there, maybe, is a way to do it. These guys, in this simulator, you can actually pitch World War II aircraft and older weaponry against new stuff and you can choose all sorts of scenarios, and there's computer generated AI, artificial intelligence, with multiple levels, and you can also incorporate humans into the game as well. So that makes it really interesting. And some of the things that there's one of the simulators is called DCS, I believe it is, and I've been watching these guys, Grim Reapers, and they're very good videos. So they set up scenarios of can World War II Japanese Pearl Harbor attacking fleet take on a modern US carrier group, etc., etc. The amazing thing is they can, okay? Even with all of the defensive missiles from all of the ships and things like that, and the Joint Strike Fighters going up against F-14 Tomcats, the Joint Strike Fighters, F-14 Tomcats, F-18 Super Hornets, AirWAC, long-range surveillance aircraft and everything, and with all of the different radars and the Aegis systems and things like that, the Japanese fleet are still able to destroy ships, critically damage. I never watched it to the end. I don't know whether they actually sunk I forget which aircraft carrier it is. It's amazing. It's very interesting to see how the new technology is great against new threats, but struggles against some very, very basic ideas. It struggles against numbers and also where the new weaponry like jet fighters, etc., they can't dogfight as good and they run out of fuel. So that's where these older World War II sort of technology planes, piston-powered planes, that's where they come into it. Their range, their loiter time, they may only be lightly armoured and only have machine guns. If you look at the costs involved in these things to replace them and losses, etc., etc., when the Japanese Zeros are flying in, and the first wave might have 50 or 60 aircraft in the first wave, and they get met by Joint Strike Fighters, F-35 Lightnings. At first, the Lightnings start to maul the Zeros, and it looks like it's going to be an unfair win. But the Zeros keep pushing on through. Yes, they take some losses, but as they keep pushing on through, then they start to engage with 20mm cannons and machine guns the Joint Strike Fighters. The Joint Strike Fighters can't land because there's other ships taking off. The same thing happens with and they can't dogfight. They can come in, fire their missiles. They try and when the Joint Strike Fighters ran out of missiles and they try to engage them with 20 mil cannon, and they have to come in and close the distance, that's where you're getting 6 to 10 Japanese Zeros on the Joint Strike Fighter. Then they can only dogfight for a very small amount of time, which they can't maneuver anywhere near as quickly as, or turn and maneuver as agilely as the Zeros. So they pretty much learn quickly that they can only do shoot and scoots, and then they have to retire back to their plane, but they can't land because there's other aircraft on deck preparing to take off. So while they're loitering around, some of them are running out of fuel and crashing into the ocean. The Japanese are still moving in, and it's just becomes a battle of attrition. And then yes, more and more and more Zeros keep getting taken down, but as they start overrunning the defenses, then they're starting to put bombs on deck while there's aircraft on the flight deck trying to take off. So we've got to remember that these engagements, yes, although they might be happening at hundreds of kilometers away, they're continuously moving together at what the Zeros would probably be traveling at somewhere around the 500 kilometers an hour sort of mark or faster. Those jet fighters are going out heavily loaded, taking off from aircraft carriers, so they can probably only carry like a certain amount of fuel load. I'm not sure on that, but then by the time they do their little mission, they go out quite a few hundred kilometers, fire off, have their little shoot and scoots, and then come back. While they're loitering around, that's when they're running into trouble of having nowhere to land, running out of fuel, etc. So there's so many variables that come into this. So far, I haven't been able to find any simulators that allow you to put modern weapons onto the older planes. So this is definitely an interesting space. Now that's only on one sort of battle scenario. I've watched quite a few different battle scenarios where a modern military base that's defended by modern anti-aircraft weapons, but they only use helicopters. They only use modern helicopters, Apaches and Russian Hinds and things like that, versus World War II equipment. But I think the defenders are also using World War II planes to go against it. But they have radar and all of these things, and radar guided anti-aircraft missiles and things like that. The thing is, they're getting overwhelmed. They're getting overwhelmed with numbers, and just like any system, it takes time to reload these things. And you have to remember as well that how long can you keep this up when you're shooting missiles that are worth, like, we don't know how many millions of dollars per missile, coming up against very cheap semi-disposable planes, so, and again, I haven't watched any of these simulators all the way through to the very end, because they go for some of them go for well over an hour and a half. So it is very interesting to see that it's other things play a role, because these simulators are very, very accurate with the data, and you can't basically play these with like a PlayStation controller or your computer. You need, I don't know I forget what they call them, but there's a name for these stuff where you need a controller, you need like the flaps and aileron sort of pedals, and you have another little control board that's got like the accelerator plus all these other little buttons. And because in these games you do have to change your trim, you've got safety switches on all your missiles and bombs and guns and things like that. You have to take the safety switches off, fire your guns, put the safety back on, so they are real simulators, which is really good to see. And it's actually very hard for someone probably like me. I wouldn't be able to play it, but what I might be able to do is, I think I'm going to buy a computer and these sort of simulators, just so I can start. I know nothing about computers, so it's going to be very hard for me, but just to get my head around this sort of stuff. But they use real maps of the world with real scalability in their maps, and then you can buy third-party maps and grids to go over the tops of their base level game. So you can get 3D images, you can get heat signature maps, you can get topographical underwater maps for the submarines and naval sort of sides of things. And you can select on radar installations and things like that, or different radar systems, and you can put them in different areas, and it will show you through mountains and that, where in valleys and over plains, where the radar actually picks up before you so you select on a certain radar, whether it's for the Russian S-400 or something similar, and you can put it here, and it will show you all of the terrain in its vicinity and range that it covers. And then in different colors, it'll show up where the black spots are, where it can't see. So you can, when you're deciding your battlefield, you can choose on the Russian radar system, and you can use your allied, you probably can't see out there, you can choose your Russian radar system over here, see what it can see, and then you can use your allied weapons, cruise missiles or planes, helicopters, whatever you're going to use, and then you can work out what's the best plan of attack, what routes you want your cruise missiles to follow to go around all these black spots and things like that. So it's very detailed. So I think that I'm going to travel down this route and see, that I might be able to find a game. There could be patches that you can buy from a third-party supplier that may allow you to put modern weapons, harpoon missiles, penguin anti-ship missiles, etc., on these older weapon systems, on these old weapon platforms. So I have seen ones that have got Spitfires, BF 109s, 190 Fokker Wolves, Mosquitoes, and Douglas Dakotas, and all sorts of things fighting against modern weaponry, modern ships, and things like that. So very, very, very interesting. Now I can sort of, and these maps cover the whole world. So I might be able to actually even do scenarios where we've got Australia's Defence Force, maybe Chinese Defence Force, potentially a percentage of what they could use, their destroyers, their submarines, with the missiles and capabilities they've got with their bombers and their cruise missiles. And we could have our air warfare destroyers, maybe borrow one or two US, a British one, to bolster Australia's defence, which is probably likely scenario what could happen. Then they could meet our Navy, our Air Force, and see how many cruise missiles actually make it across. It'd be fantastic. And then, it would be interesting to see, add some World War II vintage or Vietnam vintage aircraft into the mix. So where I still see a place for these cheap, low-tech systems that I'm talking about. And where I see them is firing cheap, keep it all cheap, but it's numbers based. So, of course, you're going to have the Aegis systems, the Navy, and the main Air Force dealing with the first wave. Then there's probably going to be drones and reserve units, whatever weaponry they've got in their reserve, in their second line of defence. But this is the third line of defence, is where I see something like this that comes into it, where they got long range, where they got loiter time, and where they can fire long range standoff systems. Even if these are using fairly dumb, crude weapon systems that may not be able to aim on a point of a ship or hit a ship indirectly, but come close. Volley fire, come very close, just to chew up the enemy's close-in self-defense systems, which may allow the fourth wave to come through with more state-of-the-art weapons, find the holes, and punch on through the holes. So, anyway, that's just what I've been looking at in the last couple of days. Thanks, guys.